Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
It's our custom to go around the room and say our names before we hear from our speaker. I'll begin. My name is Roy.
Philip.
Sam.
Rich.
David.
I'm Carl.
My name is Harley.
Robert.
George.
Lee.
Isaac.
Matt.
Mark.
Mike.
Philip.
Mark.
Noel.
Michael. Brian.
Bob. Tony.
My name is Cass.
Chris. Frank. My name is Cal. Mario.
I'm Tom.
My name is Gage.
I'm Michael.
My name is Brian.
I'm Hal. Marco. My name is Joe.
I'm David.
Warren.
Mike.
Should I read it? Second time.
Clint. Michael. Peter.
I'm Ray.
I'm Shelton.
I'm Jared.
Jesse.
Jim. And Jack. That was a little bumpy today. Our speaker today is Prasadachitta Dharmachari. As an ordained member of the Triratna Buddhist Community, Prasadachitta teaches meditation, yoga, and Buddhism at the San Francisco Buddhist Center. His practice and teaching grows out of a valuing of friendship and community. He's interested in the link between ideal qualities, such as love and clarity, as inspiring guides, and those same qualities as they manifest imperfectly in everyday relationships. Welcome, Prasadachitta.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Let me just first say how much I've enjoyed coming to this event on Sundays over the past couple of years, here and there. There's been a lot of wonderful speakers and wonderful practice that I've shared with many of you. I decided to talk about faith today, and I was going to say something like musings on faith, and I decided that I should say kind faith, because I realized that faith is a word that we're all likely to hear very differently, and probably particularly very differently from me, since I wasn't really raised in a religion. So I came to the word with curiosity and not much baggage. But a lot of you might hear the word faith and associate something opposite to kindness with it, which something I think we should all work on rectifying, because the word has a lot of potential, I think. First of all, I should say that the word in Buddhism is Shraddha, or Saddha, and it's kind of nice to give it a whole different sort of cultural context, so it's a whole different word. So perhaps today I'm not talking about faith at all as far as you're concerned. Let's just leave that as a possibility, that whatever you think faith is, that's not what I'm talking about.
I like it.
Yeah. So, etymologically, I'm not really a scholar, but I understand that Shraddha has connotations of placing the heart upon, or the lifting of the heart up, in the presence of, you might say. I was thinking recently how it's like if you take love and then remove everything from love that is just what you like. That's faith. And you can just imagine what that might be. And that's just an image. Because there's lots of things we like, and we might think we love them. And maybe that aspect of how we relate to that thing or person that is truly love and not just like is a bit more like faith. Because faith, or Shraddha, is said to be like a trusting, lucid confidence in, which means that it's present when the thing that one trusts is experienced as somewhat dislike, if you see what I'm saying. So we often experience faith pleasantly, but it also has the potential of manifesting when we're not having a pleasant experience, which is what makes faith a wonderful quality and helps us in whatever endeavor we might be, whatever good endeavor we might be undertaking. I was thinking about making it clear that there's maybe two ways that we could talk about faith. We could probably talk about it as a particular state of mind that we have. A state of mind that has certain qualities or certain results or perhaps even certain objects of attention. And we could say that its qualities are lucidness, or maybe yearning for what is good or wholesome. And that its results are sort of maybe a turning towards what one thinks might be a good or wholesome thing. Maybe it cultivates an interest in those things. And I think it could be said in this instance, to talk about it like this, it could be said to, in that moment when this is the state, it has certain objects. Objects meaning appreciation of your parents, or appreciation for spiritual guides like the Buddha, that kind of thing. So there's that, and I think that's a perfectly valid way to think of faith, but I think that if you limit faith to this kind of way of thinking as a particular state of mind, it can have a tendency, even if you don't have negative connotations with the word, it can have a tendency to be unkind. And this is where I wanted to say I want to talk about kind faith. Because if we just think about it as a particular state of mind that has particular qualities and particular objects, then we can be unkind with ourselves when we can sort of not be kind with ourselves when we think that's not the state we're having, perhaps. So I want to talk about a second way that we can talk about faith. And primarily, this is the way that I'm going to talk about faith today. I was about to say this evening, because usually I talk in the evening. As a process. Faith is a process. So faith, in this sense, is an intrinsic state of being that we all have to some degree or other. It's a kind of thread in our lives. So we're all part of a process of pursuing happiness, because that's what it means to be human. And at the core of that happiness, or that pursuit of happiness, is going to be some thread of conviction. It's going to change, it's going to have different faces and on different days, but there's going to be some thread of conviction about the good, what leads us to happiness, what satisfies us. And in this instance, faith, I'm going to say faith is the quality that we all have, and it's actually, to whatever degree we become happy, faith is responsible in a sense for that. It's that thread in our lives that makes happiness possible. As a process. So there's some connection between this state of mind of faith and this intrinsic faith that's always possible. Actually, that is happening already, even if we're not aware of it. And we may not appreciate it, but it's happening. Even when we're unhappy, there's a thread of conviction that happiness has some potential. And, well, traditionally speaking, in Buddhism, faith sort of arises in dependence upon things being unsatisfactory, us not having such a happy time in life. And I actually think that's not quite true. Actually, it just becomes apparent. It's sort of more visible when we're having a difficult time. It's more visible because faith is there when we're perfectly happy. We just don't want to look for it. We just sort of take it for granted. But when things are not going so well, when we're having a bad day, a bad meditation, a fight with our mom, which is particularly meaningful for me, faith becomes more apparent. In that moment, we can see that there's a thread of searching, of yearning for truthful resolution, of some kind of holistic, truthful resolution or holistic relationship with our lives. One that provides us contentment, provides resolution between us and our mom, for example. Anyway, it makes it more apparent. And as a process, it's said that sort of doubt, which is the opposite of faith, is something we acquire. But faith is just intrinsic, which is why faith is something perhaps that's very mysterious and we can't see. It's like it's not a particularly we can associate faith with being inspired, like or devotional, just really ready to bow to the Buddha or whatever. You might see people throwing themselves on the like the Tibetans do. But faith isn't that. Faith can happen when we don't feel inspired. I want to tell a little story about my experience of faith. One of our teachers here pointed out faith at a very important time in my practice, Viveka, who is the chair of this center. I had been meditating on a retreat for 4 or 5 days and, given it my all. Not really sure what I was doing, but I was focusing on my breath and trying really hard. And I just got quite exasperated after a while. I won't really go into it, but I essentially felt as if I had completely lost faith in what I was doing. And I was exhausted, and I just thought, I don't know, this is, all this focusing, I just felt sort of empty. And I went to Viveka, it was like late, I got her out of bed. Yeah. And I said, I think I've lost faith. I don't know, And she pointed out that if I had lost, she very simply said, if I had lost faith, I wouldn't be there talking to her. And it turned it all the way upside down. I all of a sudden understood what faith was when I hadn't really before. I had thought that all my inspiration to practice was faith. But actually faith was something much more big than that, much more calm and unremarkable, if you see what I mean. It was actually what moves me when I'm not even really thinking that I'm moving myself, if you see what I mean. And so it was a process, a thread that I could reflect upon in my life and see that I was searching for something. And I didn't need to know what it was, but I could really appreciate that there was some thread of confidence that there was value to be found in life, in the world, in friendship. And that dawned on me in that moment. And my meditation didn't automatically get any easier, but somehow at the same time it did. The founding teacher of this order, who sort of started the tradition that I'm a part of, said that faith is a response of what is ultimate in us to what is ultimate in the universe. And I was thinking about that in the context of talking about kind faith, and to get sort of cyclical, or I don't know what I mean by that, but I kind of came to the conclusion that what is ultimate in the universe is kindness. And so faith and kindness, in a sense, is what I experienced when Viveka pointed out that I still had faith, because I was searching for kindness. Like, I knew that what I was doing, the way I was meditating perhaps, wasn't quite kind, actually. And I had lost faith in doggedly putting my mind on my breath in a kind of unkind way. But I hadn't lost faith that there was a kind way to be with myself. And that's what Viveka was pointing out to me. And I was asking her, how can I be? I didn't know it at the time, but I was asking her, how can I be more kind to myself? And I'd realized that later. So there's this story about St. Francis that I heard recently, and faith. So to take a step back, I know nothing about, very, very little about the faith that St. Francis is a part of, but what he had to say about faith in this story makes a lot of sense to me on an experiential level, if not sort of outside of that religious paradigm, whatever it is. But the story goes something like this. He's meeting with two of his sort of younger friars, I guess, and they're talking about the greatest enjoyment they had ever experienced of faith. And the first one says that it's when he was caught up in contemplative rapture. And the second one says that it was when he was preaching the Word of God. And so after they've related their story, St. Francis thinks for a moment, and he starts and tells his story, and he says, "It's a cold, dark, windy, rainy night. You've had nothing to eat. You've been walking all day, and you've lost your way. You give anything for a good hot dinner beside a roaring fire, but you're lost in the wood, and the wolves are howling. Then you see a light through the trees, and there's a cottage with smoke drifting from the chimney. So you knock on the door, and it opens. And a woman shouts at you, 'Off with you, miserable friar!' Good for nothing, friar." Sorry, I missed that. "Good for nothing, friar. There's nothing for you here." And she slams the door. And then St. Francis says, that was the greatest experience, the greatest enjoyment of faith I've ever had. So there's something to think about in that, whatever's going on for St. Francis, because it's about the experience. For some reason, this totally incredibly difficult time where he has a door slammed in his face results in him appreciating faith in that moment. And so we just have to ask ourselves what that's about. And I might get to that a little more later, but it's something to think about. At this point, after having talked about St. Francis, I wanted to tell the story about the Buddha, who I have a particular affinity for, which is why I'm a Buddhist. It's a story about the Buddha coming to one of his followers who's really quite sick. I mean, really on his deathbed. And it's an interesting story, because there's lots of stories of the Buddha sitting out in the woods just being all happy and people coming to him, and paying homage to him as this great teacher who's, over on a mountaintop or in the woods or something. But in this case, the Buddha has gone way out of his way to find this follower of his who's on his deathbed. And he comes to this person, and right away, his name is Vakali. Vakali wants to get up and make a seat for the Buddha and do all these things. Usually they wash the Buddha's feet and they make a seat for him. It's a very Indian thing to treat your sort of teacher that way. And the Buddha says, "Enough, no, sit down. There's plenty, there's a seat here for me. You don't have to get up," right? So that's the way it starts. Right away, the Buddha is basically saying, whatever formalities you think you need to go through here, just give it up. Just lay down. You're not well. And then he sits down and he asks Vakali if he's getting any better. Is your health improving? And Vakali says, no, my health's not improving. It's very painful. I know I'm dying. And so the Buddha asks him, well, do you have any doubts or regrets? And Vakali says, yes, I have many doubts and regrets. And so the Buddha says, is it because you haven't been kind or considerate in your conduct? And Vakali says, no, it's not that. I've really followed your ethical guidelines, and I've been very kind, very considerate in my conduct. And the Buddha says, so, well, what is it? Why do you have this doubt and regret? And Vakali says, well, I've been sick for many years now, and I've really wanted to come and see you and be with you, but I haven't been able to. This sickness has kept me immobile. And so the Buddha says, enough with all that, Vakali. What is there to see in this old body of mine that's wasting away? And then he goes to tells them, this is one of the few places you'll find this in Buddhist literature, but it's a very beautiful thing. And actually, I've heard that you find it in Christian literature, which is interesting. But the Buddha says to Vakali, he who sees my teaching, Vakali, will see me. He who sees me will see my teaching. So what he's telling Vakali is, you're all regretful because you didn't come to see me, but you don't need to see me to be with me, because all you see here, this old decrepit body that will also die just like yours, is not me. What I am is my teaching, and if you look into my teaching, you will be with me. And I wanted to bring that up because, in a sense, Vakali has lost his faith. He feels that he's lost his faith. He feels he has doubt because he hasn't been able to be in the presence of the Buddha. He has a lot of affinity for the Buddha, and he's torn because he's going to die without having spent the time he thought necessary with the Buddha. And the Buddha's kindness is to redirect all of that affinity and all of that love towards what's really important, which isn't just being in the presence of the Buddha's aging body. It's finding this relationship that perhaps St. Francis has with reality. This affinity for kindness in the face of all experience as it is. That's what Vakali needs right now. He doesn't need this sort of doubt about being with the Buddha. And at that point, the Buddha leaves. He leaves Vakali, doesn't hang out with him, because Vakali needs to work out his faith. And he has other people taking care of him. So, the Buddha's teaching is referred to as the Dhamma or the Dharma, and it's the truth of the way things actually are. And to be clear, the way things actually are is this. It's all of you guys and me. Right now, it's just this. And appreciating this is primarily about letting go. And what's interesting about that letting go is that we tend to do it. It's the natural human tendency is to let go when things are going quite well. And that's why we are happy. When things are pleasurable things are going well. When we feel a sense of inspiration and devotion, we tend to be open, we tend to let go. When we're in a fulfilling sexual encounter with a partner, we tend to just let go. When we're in a beautiful place in nature and we just see the meaningful interplay of trees and animals and whatever, we tend to appreciate it and we let go. And I think what the Buddha is suggesting is that we confuse the objects of that letting go, what makes that letting go possible, with the letting go itself. So we think that because when we're happy we're letting go, that it's the thing that we're experiencing that makes that letting go possible. And perhaps that's true right now, but the Buddha's pointing out that it's possible in all instances, whatever's happening, whoever we're with, whatever our experience is, we can let go in the same way that we do when we're in a pleasant experience. So the truth of the Buddha's teaching is just this, as it is. Even when it's obscured by our fixations on what it is we think is going to make us happy, or what it is that is making us happy, or making us upset. But it's always present. And I would submit that what St. Francis appreciated, what made him so enamored with that experience when the door is slammed in his face, is the opportunity to appreciate kindness. In that moment, he appreciated that opportunity to be kind in the face of all that discomfort, the rain, the cold, the hunger. And he knew that experience was not separate from the thread of his faith. How are we doing on time?
We're about 15 on this one.
Okay. Let's see. I have two ways of making up time at the end. One is that the seminal work, or the seminal teaching by the Buddha on kindness, is the Metta Sutta, which I could read. And actually, I think I will, because this is a really good translation. It's not an exact translation, but I think it captures the spirit better than many translations that try to stay word for word accurate. And the Metta Sutta is this teaching the Buddha gives to these monks. I'm not even sure. It might have just been a song that was remembered by monks, but then later on they gave it a context. And the context they gave it later on was that these monks were having a hard time somewhere. They were meditating up in the woods, and they were basically assaulted by wood spirits. And basically by terrible odors and terrible sounds. And they had to leave this wood because that's where the Buddha said they should meditate. But they had to leave because they were frightened of these wood spirits. And so this is the teaching the Buddha gave them to go back. But probably this was just a general teaching that was remembered and then later on given that context. But the Buddha says, if you know what is truly good for you, and you understand the possibility of reaching a perfect state of peace, then this is how you need to live. So he starts out, it's just advice. Start as a capable person who is upright, really upright, gently spoken, flexible, and not conceited. Then, become contented and happy with few worries and an uncomplicated life. Make sure your sense experience is calm and controlled, and be duly respectful, and don't hanker after families and groups. And avoid doing anything unworthy that wiser people would criticize. Then meditate like this. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings become happy in their heart of hearts, and think of every being without exception. The weak, the strong, from the smallest to the largest, whether you can see them or not, living nearby or far away. beings living now or yet to arise. May all beings become happy in their heart of hearts. May no one deceive or look down on another anywhere for any reason, whether through feeling angry or through reacting to someone else. May no one want another to suffer. As strongly as a mother, perhaps risking her life, cherishes her child, her only child. Develop an unlimited heart for all beings. Develop an unlimited heart of friendliness for the entire universe, sending metta above, below, and all around. Beyond all narrowness, beyond all rivalry, beyond all hatred, whether you are staying in one place or dwelling, sitting down or in bed. In all your waking hours, rest in this mindfulness, which is known as living in heaven right here and now. In this way, you will come to let go of views, be spontaneously ethical, and have perfect insight, and leaving behind craving for sense pleasures, from the rounds of rebirth you will finally be completely free. So, I figured if we have any questions or comments, we could do that at this point. Yeah.
This might be kind of a silly question, but you spent all this time talking about faith. So I'm still really unclear about an actual, in your mind, an actual definition of what that is. I wondered if you could just, maybe you said it and I missed it, but if you could just kind of, for my own gratification, you just kind of just define the word in your eyes.
It's a trusting and lucid confidence.
In what?
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, the result matters in that sense. Meaning, depending on what you have faith in, you will get different results.
I thought about faith in the opposite word of despair. It's almost defined by not being despairing. It's like people talk about faith that life will go on, their life will go on. And if they stop having that faith, then despair sets in, which leads to a non-life almost. So it's a kind of, to me, it's like a thread. And you continue to grasp, perhaps.
And without it, you despair.
Yes.
I would just comment that for me, hope is the opposite of despair, and hope is related to faith. But I was interested in when you began speaking, the Sanskrit word, presumes the Sanskrit word for faith, that you said that the etymology has to do with the lifting up of the heart, or the opening up of the heart. And if you take that, if you think about that, the opening up of the heart to truth, whatever that truth is, the truth of the universe, the truth of being, whatever, I think, and it is that opening, or at least what I heard you say, what was helpful to me was this idea of faith being an opening to truth, your own truth, that could have very many different aspects. Truth as a gay man, truth as whatever. But basically that kind of psychological state of trying to be open.
I think that is accurate, because once you get into a more Buddhist, there are very traditional expositions on faith, and they're quite long, because in a Buddhist context, that would be true, that would be faith. And then we can also talk about faith more generally as just a kind of state of mind that occurs even even if per se truth isn't what you think you're appreciating. Like I was trying to point out that there's an element of faith in opening up to whatever, even if it may not be truth. Although I don't know if it's possible to open up to anything but truth in a certain sense.
But like the story about Francis.
Yes.
You were saying, I mean, Francis, if that is a popular story, is true, and it certainly could be. You know, the idea that he was open up to the possibilities of this encounter
Yes.
wasn't the encounter, wasn't what he was hoping for, but he recognized that it was a reality in his journey or whatever.
Right. I totally, I resonate with St. Francis. And then there's his other friars who have their greatest experience of faith is teaching the gospel of God, which I don't resonate with. And I guess that's the point, is that it isn't that those things aren't faith, but there's something distinctly more truthful about St. Francis's faith. Yeah.
So I was initially puzzled by the faith concept, and it seemed to me as you went on that where I came out to, and I think it's where you were suggesting, faith is that things can be okay just as they are in this existence, with sickness, old age, and death, and impermanence. And hope, it seems to me, which is something I've struggled with the concept at least before, is kind of tricky. I think it fits into the Christian perspective, if you like, of purgatory. Better than hell, not as good as heaven. Because hope suggests that, no, they aren't okay just as they are, but there's a possibility that they'll get better. So when we arrive at nirvana and cessation, then it's okay as it is right now, I think.
Back to that scene of St. Francis, beyond worthless friar, there's nothing here for you, silent. And he's standing and there, rain's dripping down the back of his collar, and then, well, I think almost anyone would be shocked. What did you find to have faith in? Here's what I imagine is, I can accept this. I don't hate. It doesn't make me hate. It makes me feel compassion and pity for this old woman in her cottage in the woods, and I'll go on. Is that what?
Yeah, I mean, I would characterize exactly what you're saying in a slightly different manner.
Mm-hmm.
That St. Francis simply realized that the reason he simply appreciated that there was no cruelty or hatred in it. You see what I mean?
Cruelty or hatred
in him, due to his faith. You see what I mean? There's a difference. It's not that he had an event. It was a lack of an event in a certain sense. It was just like it took that slamming of the door to make everything perfectly clear. All of the things he had been working on up to that point, all of his kindness, all of his devotion towards, I would say, kindness, because that is really what St. Francis is known for.
I really appreciate your association of kindness with faith, because I feel like we all have faith, whether we want to characterize it as that. And it's that kind of reliance on each other's kindness that yields civilization. When I drive my car, I have faith that other humans are going to observe the rules that make driving a car possible.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as you go out into any activity. So that really resonated.
I think that's the sense that I was trying to say, that to any degree that we're happy, it's dependent on faith. Yeah.
differentiate between faith, or belief or trust in an outcome of our practice, or and clinging. Because that story you told about you going to your teacher in the middle of the night and having lost faith in what you were doing sort of ties in with having an expectation of what it would deliver to you, or what the outcome would be, which is clinging, and the root of suffering.
Yeah.
So how do we? It's like there's this fine line where we're on it. We're having faith, like you said, faith in anything determines our outcome. But if we believe, like he said, that everyone on the road will obey the laws, you're bound to be really disappointed in about 2 blocks.
Right. Right. So faith is a quality that's directed in different ways, for better or for worse. And I think, if you think in terms of not the Buddhist teaching in a certain sense of insubstantiality of things, points that so there is faith, but it's not separate from whatever else is going on in your mind or your experience. So, in a sense, there could be faith directed to multiple things simultaneously. So while you're driving, you have faith that people aren't going to hit you, but you also, have faith that your brakes are going to work. I mean, there's a lot of layers of faith going on. And I think in terms of grasping and clinging, there's particularly, I think our practice often is progressively seeing where there's particular types of faith that's particularly unhelpful. So if you see what I mean, like if I have a particular faith in my practice bringing me a certain experience, that's going to be particularly unhelpful. It's particularly helpful to have faith in your brakes, generally speaking, as long as you have them checked from time to time. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I think that's our mindfulness, sati sampajana, our mindfulness, which we just have to cull through all the things we have faith in at any given time and challenge it, I suppose.
I'm still struggling with this idea. Would it be fair to say that the difference between, let's say, letting go and giving up would be that the letting go implies a faith? The giving up is lack of faith?
Well, when you give up, what are you giving up? I don't know. You mean giving up as in like despair?
Exactly. What the?
Yes. Well, but
versus letting go.
But faith is the opposite of that in a certain sense, because it has to do with conviction in efficacy, you might say. Basically, the efficacy of things, in particular, having effects. In Buddhist terms, it has to do with karma, and that means that, what I think and do has an effect in the world, and there's a continuity, and that would be the thread of faith that I follow, and I'm constantly being told whether or not that is effective in life as I go along, because I become either more unhappy and more disintegrated, or I become more happy and more integrated. Does that make sense?
Still struggling.
Yeah. Jack?
I feel like an infant in a way in understanding this, and that coming from a post-Christian background, looking back at Christianity, one of the key concepts is faith. You must have faith in God, in Christ, which I understood as kind of craziness, belief in that which you have, belief or confidence in that which you have no evidence for believing. And one of the things that attracted me to Buddhism is it's very practical, in which Buddha said, try this out. Here's a way of approaching life, of living life. See if it works for you. And it's a practice. We practice it. And if we get better at it, then that is some evidence for continuing that practice. It gives you some reason to have confidence that it can develop more again. So how is that, how is your understanding of that different from that kind of...
It's different because when you first heard the Buddha's teaching, maybe you associated it with a person sitting cross-legged, maybe you associated it with a particular person who told you. You probably had all kinds of associations, maybe the Dalai Lama, who knows. But you personally had some faith in it even before you tried it, because people are telling you to try all kinds of things. Are they not? I mean, in a certain sense, the whole world is telling you to do this, do that. This will make you happy, that'll make you happy. But at some point, you pick out of all of that. And that's an act of faith. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to believe concretely that that thing is going to have the result you think it's going to have. It's just valuable to appreciate that quality of mind that allowed you to simply move forward and act and try something out. And that's really what this is about. It's about appreciating that quality. We want to appreciate the process through which we engage with the world open-heartedly and lucidly. This is the word lucid. When it comes to lucid, this means checking to see if it's actually doing what you expect in a certain sense from moment to moment. It's not the same as the kind of faith you're talking about in that sense.
Good.
We have time for one more question, more comment.
Jim?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very compelling talk. I love that you call it the lucid confidence. And I'm reminded that William James, who was sort of father of American pragmatism and philosophy, said that faith initially is faith in other people's faith. You see people who seem to have a being. And you are, that which is in you recognizes that there's something there that you want, and that's part of how we, our internal GPS steers us, and then we can have trust in that recognition of truth around us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Prasadachitta. Okay, announcements?
I would like to put out a request on my government, and a few months ago we held a potluck, and I would like to see if people would be interested in doing another potluck sometime next month or so.
You want to show of hands? You want to show of hands?
Not just, we can talk during the coffee or the afterwards, but I just want to put it out there.
Great, thank you.
Next week, our speaker is Carol Newhouse, who's a longtime favorite of this community. She is warm, funny, smart, and has a gift for bringing the Dharma down to life's daily ironies. She's great. Also, the San Francisco Choral Society has given one more performance of a stellar production of Haydn's Yes, guest. At 4 o'clock this afternoon at Calvary Presbyterian on Fillmore and Jackson. It's a huge piece, but it's full of, it's a torrent of music. With beautiful singing, soloists are magnificent, and the chorus does just handle it forward.
Attendance.
My name is Tage, and I'm the host for today. There's some treats out by the kitchen area and some hot water and the electric carafe for tea. If you use a mug, there's some hot soapy water in the sink. You can rinse it out. There's a sign-up list for that gives options to join our electronic mailing list or sign up for our newsletter. It's on the credenza. I'm going to be passing around the Donna Bowl. The recommended contribution is $5 to $8. And finally, there's a group that goes out for a lunch after, and they usually meet around 12:30, and everybody's welcome to join.
Anyone else? Okay, let's stand up for our dedication of merit, please. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, and may all be free of sorrow and the causes of sorrow, and may all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for today, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.